Hey everyone, welcome to this video, and today's video is a little bit different from my usual videos because today I'm putting my head on the block and I'm going to open up to you guys, give back a little bit and show you my first ever tattoos, and then it's going to be like a time progression, if you like, over about a 5-year period. And the message in this video isn't about me saying, hey, look at my tattoos or anything like that. I don't particularly see myself as an amazing tattooist anyway. I'm probably a very average tattooist, but I think it's important to show people that, especially in the beginning, it's okay to suck a little bit, basically. So do watch this video through its entirety, because at the end of the video I've also got some really good advice for you as well, especially if you're new to the business, and even if you're not, it's still advice that you can use and take on with your personal journey. So I am feeling quite anxious about this, guys, because in this box is my first ever practice skin. The first time I actually pulled a line with a tattoo machine is in this box on a practice skin. Now, most tattooists have probably got a similar thing locked away, guarded by dragons and fire, and nobody ever sees, and literally only a handful of people have ever seen inside this box until today. Let's not waste any more time, guys. Let's get straight into it, because like I say, this has caused me some massive anxiety, so feel free to roast me in the comments. It's fine, I'm fine with that. Okay, let's just do it. So this is my first ever practice skin. I'm going to blow it up on the big screen for you. Ignore the skull, that's what my mentor did, that's why that looks pretty good, to be fair. I'm looking at the horrible stuff around here, that's what I did. So let's blow that up on a screen. So first thing that we're going to be looking at here is the lines. Now these lines are anything but perfect, but it was my first ever lines that I pulled, and I've got really good memories of when I first did do these, because it just felt amazing. It was the first time that I got to pick up a machine and pull a line, and I've just got really fond memories of this. Then moving on to colour packing, you can see here the solid black, which I've tried to pack in there. You can see it's a little bit patchy, where I've even chewed the practice skin up a little bit on to the right of it there. But again, at least it was on practice skin and not real skin. We'll move up to this, I don't even know what that is, to be honest. Some weird love heart kind of shape thing. Terrible, you know, wonky lines, patchy shade. But again, it was the first ever things that I did with a tattoo machine. I'm going to disregard the skull. I did line the skull, but my mentor coloured it and shaded it. And all this on the practice pads were done on a core machine, because when I first started, I learned everything on a core machine. So the next thing we've got along there is the dad cross. I actually did that for my sister, and I actually tattooed that, and we'll get to that when we get into the photos of the tattoos that I did. And at the time I was really happy with that. I mean, I'm looking at it now and I could just pull it to pieces, and it'd be half an hour just ripping everything that's wrong with that. But again, at the time I was super proud of it, to be fair. So on to some more designs. You see the clown there, trying to get a little bit of shade to give those bells on his hat like a shine to him. And you can just see how wonky these lines are. Terrible. And then there's the shark at the bottom there. Again, if you look at the waves at the bottom of the tail, this is all just run-of-the-mill tattoo flash that I was just practicing with. And then we're moving on to the skull with the hat. And the shade is starting to come through there. You can see it's starting to soften a little bit. I'm sort of getting my act together, as opposed to like the shark at the bottom. And then there's the dog, first attempt at colour by the looks of it. You can see like I've just packed in some solid red at the side of it and then tried to apply that to the dog, and not very well as well. But again, it was all a learning curve. It was my first practice pad. So me being me, wanting to progress quicker, I brought practice skins home, and then I used to practice at home a lot. And this next one is, I don't know if you've heard of him, but is an old film star, comedy star called Norman Wisdom. Yeah, I wanted to do his portrait. And I attempted this twice. I used to do this a lot. I'd do it, and then I'd look at it and I wouldn't be happy, and then I'd do it again. And I remember doing this one, particularly this one, at about 3 o'clock in the morning on my kitchen table, just practicing the methods that I'd learned in the day with my mentor. And then I thought I'd have a go at doing portraits. My mentor never actually did portraits, but I always wanted to do them. So I used to learn techniques at work, shading, lining and whatnot, and then I'd come home and apply those techniques and try and work it out myself. And then you can see there's a few little love arts around there, which are just doodles basically. So there's the practice skins out the way. Now, this tattoo that I'm about to show you was done on one of my best friends, Lynn's, and it was done on a toe. I think she's forgiven me for it since it's been done, but let's just do it. This is one of those tattoos, I'm sure everyone's got one of these where you just can't even look at it. You're like, I never want to see that again. So here we have it, and bless her soul, she donated to the cause, donated a bit of skin, and yeah, it's blown out, it's fell out, the placement of it's wrong. You know, for some reason I placed it where the toe actually bends, and anything that's going to be symmetrical where there's a joint, it's not a good idea, because obviously it's going to look really misshaped every time that joint's bent. I mean, a tattoo like that now would probably take me about 3 minutes, something like that, and I remember this tattoo literally taking about half an hour, 40 minutes. I mean, how can you spend 40 minutes on that? And I was just sweating, and hands were shaking, and yeah, it's it's kind of a love-hate memory, this one. Good memory at the time doing it, but yeah. So let's move on. So this is the cross, which you just previously saw on the practice pad. I actually did that on a practice pad probably about 6 times before I had the confidence to do it on skin. And this was done on my sister's wrist, which was obviously in memory of my dad. To be fair, it healed really, really well. The script is pretty bad. I mean, I'm looking at the curl on that D. I did have to go over this. I remember I did have to touch the script up because a lot of that fell out. It just looks really patchy. The colour looks a bit off colour on it where I've not packed it right. I probably stained it a little bit as well where I've rubbed black over it. But again, massive learning curve, but she was happy with it. And what I always say with tattoos as well, as long as the person that's had the tattoo is happy, that's the main thing. It doesn't matter what tattoo I do, to be fair. I'm never happy with them. I'm always picking them to pieces. So let's go for the next one. So this is a portrait of Weird Girl from the film Frankenweenie, and this is actually done on my leg. So when I tattooed it, it was obviously upside down. I was looking down at it. And the reason why I wanted to do this, despite loving Tim Burton characters, is because I wanted to attempt a portrait. I know it's not like a realism portrait, but it's kind of there. It's got like soft shades in it and things like that. And like I say, my mentor didn't do portraits, so I had to kind of learn portrait techniques myself. And I thought if I did it on myself and it goes wrong, then it's on me. You know, I didn't want to try doing a portrait on someone and it messing up. But all in all, I was really, really happy how that turned out. Especially at the time, I was really happy about it because I didn't know how it was going to turn out. And I thought maybe I'm just going to make a complete mess of my leg. As far as things went, I was more than happy with it. And then I ended up progressing and then filling pretty much all the top off my leg with Tim Burton characters. Okay, so this was kind of like a Day of the Dead tattoo, which I did. And again, at the time, I was quite happy with it. The client was happy with it. But looking back on it and critiquing it now, I can find more wrong than right with it. The face just looks really flat. There's hardly any shade in it, and that's a mistake that I used to make quite a lot in the beginning. I just wouldn't go dark enough, I wouldn't put enough shade in stuff, and I think what it was because when the tattoo started to build up and then there was a face there, I was so scared of messing up and putting like weird shades in it or dark shades in it. So I just tend to like ease off on it, and then that's obviously how it turns out. The roses, especially at the bottom, I'm not happy with them at all. I used to hate doing roses. I don't mind them now, but I used to hate doing them. There was something about them that just used to stress me out, which is quite a bad thing to hate doing really when you're a tattooist, because obviously you tend to do a lot of roses. So let's move on to the next one. Okay, so this was my first realism portrait. This was done on, again, one of my best friends, Rob's leg. And it was of his daughter. This was done with a coil machine, the whole tattoo. And for the most part, I mean, it looks like the picture. I mean, I can critique it now and say, you know, it's lacking depth and shade, but for the most part, it does look like the photograph, and it healed well. So all in all, I was quite happy with that at the time. If I were to do it again now, I'd probably go a lot darker and add more detail. But again, it's a learning curve, and he trusted me enough to do that portrait of his daughter on his leg. So yeah, that was one of my first ever realism portraits. So now you can see moving on, I'm starting to get the feel for shade, and I've combined like hard lines around the edge of that with realism, soft in the middle. My favourite part of this tattoo was the eyes and the fur. I remember before I did it looking at the stencil thinking, wow, this looks a bit complicated now it's actually on the skin, but I just took my time with it, went from A to B, and we finally got there in the end. And you can see it's starting to click, especially around the bottom of the mouth there. You can see it's quite dark, and it's give that mouth more depth, and it's made it pop. And again with the eyes, I've just put that little bit of darker shade around the eyes just to make them pop a bit more. So I'm starting to learn from my previous mistakes, if you like. And that's what this is all about, it's progression, it's about learning. So moving on, this was a portrait of a guy called Barillo from a band called Dr. Feelgood. Again, at the time, I was really happy with it. It looked like him, which is the main thing when you do a portrait, I suppose. Looking at it now, critiquing it, it is quite patchy. But favourite part of this tattoo is the hair. I think I really pulled that off with the shine on the hair, giving it that background. Again, it's just that learning curve and thinking, you know, how am I going to get that shine coming through? So I gave it that bit of background just above the hair just to offset it, to obviously make the illusion that there's the shine there. So all in all, I'm quite happy with that. I have seen this client since, and it healed really well. And it was on the tricep as well, so it wasn't the easiest places to tattoo, with it being on the tricep there, just above the elbow. But all in all, I was happy with it. It went quite well. So looking at this tattoo, it's really, really flat. And again, it's about me not going dark enough. I'm not happy with this one. I mean, the client was happy with it, but I'm not happy with it at all. Just looks really flat, the face. There's no depth in it at all. The eyes look washed out. The teeth around the mouth and the tongue area, it's not too bad, but the rest of the tattoo, it could have, looking back on it, it could have done with like a really dark background or something, and just loads more detail putting in the fur. I do remember this client, he was in quite a lot of pain with this tattoo, so I could have easily put another 2-3 hours in it, but it just wasn't going to happen. So, but yeah, again, like I keep saying, it's that learning curve, and it's building on your, I'm not going to say mistakes, but stuff that you didn't do on your previous tattoo. You know, you can look at it. So I'm looking at this one thinking, okay, so next time I do anything like this, I need more detail, I need to go darker, I need more depth. And it's just constantly reevaluating your work, and just constantly just really looking at your work and saying, what can I do next to improve on my previous tattoo? So let's move on. Okay, so this I was quite happy with, to be fair. It's got a softness which I like about it. The script went in really nice. It's nice and flowing. I mean, if you zoomed in on it, there'd probably be a few little shaky lines on it. All in all, what I liked best about this was just around the horse's eye and coming down the side of his face there. I just like how soft that I got the shade on that. So this was a horror sleeve that I started. Obviously that's the Exorcist there. And you got Freddy Krueger at the top there. And I'm really starting to learn to go darker, and you can see that's evident in, especially like Freddy Krueger's face there. The thing that I like most about this tattoo is the way I've got you can see the guy at the bottom standing there, and I've just left the blank skin there basically, but it offsets against the darks, and it gives that illusion of like a bright street light. And she went on to have a full arm covered in horror characters. So let's move on. So I've thrown this one in there. What I like about this tattoo is the fact that it's so small, and my favourite part about this tattoo is you see the front leg there, and you've got that really, really subtle shadow underneath it, just adding to that 3D effect. And obviously I put a coin there just to show how small that was. It probably is the size of an actual ladybird. And she was super happy with this tattoo. And again, I've thrown that in there because it's just showing you not just the progression of the black and grey work, but I'm starting to branch into colour work. And obviously these tiny, tiny tattoos are feat in themselves to tattoo, because you've got to get all that tiny, tiny detail in there. And it's really easy on a tiny tattoo like this just to lose the stencil altogether. And it can go horribly wrong, but for the most part, I was quite happy with this tattoo. So this is somebody's dog that sadly died. They wanted a remembrance tattoo of him. All in all, again, I was happy with it. She was happy with it. It's not the best portrait of a dog in the world, but it did look like the reference image. Things that I could have improved on with that, I could have gone dark around the edges. I didn't want to give it like a solid line around the edge, because I think when you do that with any tattoo, when you start putting big solid lines around the edge, especially with realism, it starts to look more like a caricature than a realism. But I think I could have gone a little bit darker in hindsight, but again, it's just a massive learning curve. So let's move on. So this was a really cool one to do. I did this on one of my friends. The reference image was by one of his friends on Instagram, and he said it was okay for me to tattoo this on my friend's leg. What I liked about this one, it was for the most part about 95% line work, and when you look really close in on it, there's all like tiny little lines in there, and I thought were really cool. And it obviously it matched the reference image, so that was job done. But I've thrown this one in there because you can see I'm really starting to get a feel for the shade. So if you compare that back to that tiger one that we just looked at, this one has got loads more depth. You can see around the tail there, and my tattoo method is really starting to come together from this point onwards. So let's move on. Okay, so we've got obviously Pennywise from the new It film. This was part of a large back piece cover-up, so I'm starting to venture into cover-ups at this point. Again, critiquing it now, at the time I was super happy with it, but critiquing it now, I think the top of the head is lacking loads of shade. The collar of him is just, that needs redoing, to be fair. The hair, again, there's not much detail in the hair there. I do remember I did have to go a little bit darker than I wanted to with the hair because there was the tattoo underneath it, and that needed covering. Best part of this tattoo, I think, is the eyes, and I like the makeup, how bold it is, and it comes around, it really offsets on his pale face there. Moving on, so this is Lord of the Rings, and again, it's looking just, if I'm critiquing it, just slightly washed out for me. Could have gone darker again, especially as you come towards the bottom of the beard. You can see it just sort of like flows off into, it's just too light, it needs to go darker, and it could have done with some more darker lines inside the beard as well, just to make it really pop and get all those really fine detailed hairs in there, which I've clearly not done on this tattoo. I think as well the background at the top of the hat, it could have been extended a bit more. I couldn't go too much because obviously the guy wanted room for scope for extending his tattoo, which is why it's cropped down so short. But I think in hindsight it could have done with a little bit more black in there for the background to offset it. So this was again part of that that Pennywise that you just saw. You can see the before picture on there. I don't even know what that was supposed to be. Wasn't my work. But obviously he wanted a back piece doing in horror, and that was Jack Nicholson from The Shining, which we put on there. As far as covers go, I think it worked really well. It was a brave cover to attempt. When he approached me, he said he'd been to a few studios that wouldn't even look at it. His back has since been covered completely in horror characters, and it looks really cool now, but that was the first, no sorry, the Freddy there was the first bit that I did on that, and then we moved on, did the Shining. But yeah, it looks completely different. And the cool thing about this is the guy actually said he used to keep a t-shirt on holiday and stuff because he was just so embarrassed about taking his t-shirt off because his back was just a mess. And he's gone from that to really being proud of taking his t-shirt off and walking around with it off when he's on holiday in the sun, and he always gets complimented on his massive horror back piece. So that's a really cool thing when that happens as well. So here we've got Hannibal Lecter, and this was a black and red tattoo. If you look around the mouth area there, I've used quite a lot of red, different shades of red, dirty red in there, just to give that blood effect. And you can see, you know, going back previously from some of the first tattoos of this video, my tattoo work, it's starting to come together. I'm still not happy with it. It looks too washed out to me on here. It could have gone a lot darker, but all in all, for the most part, it healed well. I was happy with it. But if I'm critiquing it, looking back on it now, it could have gone a lot darker and just a lot more detail in the face there. But it does look like him, so that was mission accomplished, I suppose. So let's move on. Now it's really starting to click about the shade thing and going dark. And this was, again, in memory, it was a tribute tattoo of a guy's dog that sadly died. And you can see in the fur there around the mouth and around the eye area, I've really gone dark, really starting to understand about depth and shade versus depth. And I've got that nice soft fur in there. The thing that I liked most about this was that left eye there, and there's like just like a flick of white hair going through there, and obviously that was just a piece of skin which I left blank to give that illusion. And that's probably, it sounds silly, but that's my favourite part of that tattoo, just that little flick of hair that I captured. So moving on, really starting to get into covers at this point. You can see that before picture. That before picture, I wish I'd taken a picture of it before he had laser, because it was really, really dark. It was like an odd looking wolf, I think it was. So we gave this guy quite a few sessions. He had about a 12 months, about a year's worth of laser sessions on it first, which faded it to what you can see now. And then we put this Red Indian tattoo over the top of it, portrait over the top of it. For the most part, I was happy with it. It did cover really well, but again, it could have gone a little bit darker. But I think that, especially with this one, I'm really starting to get my shades together. I'm really starting to see what works for cover-ups, because not all cover-ups work. And again, it was quite an ambitious cover-up to attempt, but I think it worked really well for the most part, and the guy was happy with it as well. So I've chose this tattoo to show you because obviously it's not all about me talking about shades, but especially in the beginning I found that I couldn't get sleeves to look like they look, you know, like you see like tattoos online, like sleeves, and they look really cool and compact together. When I used to do sleeves, they just looked a bit too spaced out, they didn't flow. So the reason I put this one on, because this sleeve really flowed well on his arm. So the picture to the left, obviously, that's his lower arm. That was fresh done on that day when the photo was taken. And all the skulls and everything above it, you can see on the right, they're all fully healed. So you can see I've really got my act together with the shade now, because that's fully healed, and you can see it's popping on the skin still, even though it is fully healed. And the cool thing about this was, this guy didn't have any tattoos before he came to me, and he just went straight out, and he had this done probably over about 4 sessions, sleeved up, and I think he's going to move on to his neck, to his other arm as well, because he was so happy with it. But yeah, all those skulls and roses, they all sort of like compact round into the bicep, and it just flows really well. And I just love how everything on this arm is compact, and it just seems to flow and sit right on the arm. So moving on. So we've got Michael Jackson Thriller here. It's obviously Michael Jackson as a zombie. The reason I put this one on is because I'm branching out at this point from black and grey. Black and grey is my comfort zone. You'll find most tattooists do have a comfort zone, and mine is definitely black and grey. I want to put more feathers in my cap, so I'm slowly branching out onto colour here. So this was done with a hell of a lot of mixing in between different shades of green, just like doing a black and grey tattoo really, but obviously using colour instead. And I was really happy how this one turned out. Looking at it now, the face, especially the negative areas, the light areas, could have done with a bit more colour in them, and the darkers could have been darkened up a little bit more. Maybe a little bit more brighter reds in the jacket as well. But for the most part, you can see it's him. It does look like him. The guy was happy with it. So moving on to the next one. Okay, so 2 things that I like about this. I like the effect that I've captured in the astronaut's helmet. I remember the reference image for this was like a photograph, and thinking, how am I going to pull this off? But the guy really, really wanted it, and I thought, you know, if I break it down and really, really look at it and concentrate on it, it's not that hard. It's just being clever with your darks and negative skin, and that's how that was achieved. But for the most part, we're really happy with that. And then if you look to the right of it and you look at the rocket coming up there from the Earth into space, that's the thing that I really, really liked about this, because it was basically using cold colours with warm colours. So you've got the warm colours of the blast of the rocket against the cold colours of Earth there, and it gave that really cool effect. And it really does look like, obviously, like it's glowing on the skin, if you like. And that's what I really enjoyed about that, is about using those colours to give that effect, a really cool effect. So let's move on. Okay, so back to the black and grey. This obviously is Frankenstein. This tattoo healed really, really well. Again, if I was to critique it, it's not perfect, but obviously you've been watching this video so far, you can see some of my earlier portraits and stuff. You can see I'm starting to really get my act together with these shades and depths, and I'm really starting to learn what works and what doesn't work. If I were to critique this, I'd probably say the top of the head could go darker, around the sides of the face could go a bit darker, and probably a little bit more shade in the nose. But for the most part, it pulled off and it healed really well. So we're getting into more realism again here. This is obviously an eagle on this guy's chest. What I liked about this is how soft the feathers went in, and you can zoom in on that and you can really pick out the detail of each feather. And then you got like the shine on the eye there, and then obviously around the beak it goes a lot darker to give it that pop, that depth. And again, if you look back to my previous portraits, my previous realism, you can see that I've come on leaps and bounds with my shading. Let's move on. So this was a portrait of a client's dad that sadly died. Obviously she brought me the photograph, and the photograph was nice and contrasty. Obviously I'm learning where to put my shades, when to put my shades, but also what I am learning is, with doing realism, is knowing when to tell people a photograph just isn't going to work and when a photograph is going to work. And in this case, when she brought it in, I can look at a photograph now and it probably take me 5 seconds to say whether it's going to work or not, literally. And it's about looking to see, one, if the image is good quality and it's not blurry, and two, if it's got lots of contrast. Which is why, incidentally, old film stars from black and white films are really cool to tattoo, because those pictures of them, they're usually really contrasty. The photograph that she brought in obviously had enough detail on it, and it was contrasted enough to do it. Sometimes people come in with photographs where the flash has lit up the face and there's no actual shade or detail on the faces, and I just have to outright and say, I don't think this is going to work. Just be honest with the client. And 9 times out of 10 they'll go away and they'll find another photo which they'll be happy to have tattooed. But I think it's always best to be honest with people, be upfront with people, what's going to work, what's not going to work from the off. So let's move on. And finally we come to this one, and this for me is probably to date the tattoo which I'm most proud of. If someone were to ask me what's the best tattoo that you've ever done, I think this will be up there as probably one of the best tattoos, that if it's not the best tattoo I've ever done. Now the reason why I like this, it's got so many elements, and it was quite a challenge, because when someone brings you a photograph of a dog which is obviously white, and we don't tattoo in white, we tattoo in obviously black and grey, then you've got to bring together lots of elements to make that tattoo work. So the first thing to do to make this tattoo work was to give it a dark edge, and you can see around the left side there, and then following around all around the top of the head, you've got that dark edge, and then you've just got round the teeth there, and then the bottom lip of the dog, you've got that shine on it. You've got enough darks in there to give it that depth. Again, around the nose, if you've ever tattooed a dog portrait, or if you're ever going to in the future, really look at the nose, or if you've ever drawn one even. Dogs' noses are really weird to draw, and especially to tattoo. So yeah, that pulled off really nice. And then again, I like the flicks of hair which just go past its eyes there. Got really nice shine on the eyes there. This client that I did this tattoo for, she's a regular client, so I have seen this tattoo fully healed, and I'm really pleased to say it healed absolutely perfect. It didn't need any touch-ups, it didn't need anything doing to it, and it just sits on the skin like it does there, pretty much like a photograph. So for me, for my tattoo journey so far, this is probably one of the best tattoos that I've ever done. So I did say I was going to give you a little bit of advice at the end of this video, guys, especially if you're new to tattooing. And that advice will be not to look at other people's work and base your work on theirs, because I think this can have a massive negative effect to your progression. So for example, let's say, I mean, don't get me wrong, enjoy other people's work, look at other people's work and appreciate it, but don't say go on the internet, look at some multi-award winning artist, look at their work and say, oh, mine's rubbish, I'm just going to throw my machines away, what's even the point, I'm never going to be like that. Because even these massive award-winning artists, they've had to start somewhere, they've got a box somewhere locked up with the first practice pads. And when I see anything which is absolutely outstanding piece of work, I look at it as though that's a reflection of how much time, dedication and effort that person has put in to reaching that level of greatness, if you like. So I think the quickest way forward and the best way forward if you want to progress really well is to critique your own work. You know, don't look at other people's work and base your work on theirs, look at your own work. So when you've done a tattoo, really look at it, like I've just gone through this album now of my work, look at it, focus on parts of it that you're not happy with and really critique it, pull it apart and say, right, so I'm not happy with the line work on this. What can I do for my next tattoo so my line work doesn't look like that one? And then, you know, you do your next tattoo, look at it again. What can I do again? Is it the shade? Is it the line? Is it the depth? Is it the detail? Really pick it apart, dissect it, and then actively think, what can I do on my next tattoo to combat that? And you'll find if you have this sort of mentality and you keep critiquing your own work and keep moving forward like that, your progress will just go up and up so quick, and you'll even surprise yourself. You know, don't be one of these people that look at your own work and say, you know, oh, it's absolutely perfect. There's nothing wrong with it. I can't improve on that. Everybody can improve on it. There's a quote, a famous quote by Leonardo da Vinci, which I love, and it absolutely hits the nail on the head, especially for anything like artists and tattooists. And the quote is, "My work is never complete, only ever abandoned." And that is so true, because there's so many tattoos, you know, I could be tattooing all day, 8-hour session, come home, look at the photographs and just pick it to pieces and think, you know, I could have spent another 3-4 hours on that. And I think the point is, it's not a bad attitude to have, to be so critical of your own work, because I think that's what can drive you forward. And the very last point I want to make, guys, is you should be having fun with it. And I do say this in another video of mine, but I'll say it again, we're not saving lives, guys. We're not surgeons, we're not doctors. And despite, you know, a lot of people in this business think they are, there's a lot of entitled people in this business. I want to add balance to that, you know, and just bring people back down to earth and just, you know, just have fun with it. If the client's happy with the tattoo and you're kind of happy with the tattoo, then what's the harm done? It's the job's been done. And like I say, there is a lot of entitled people in this business, and I genuinely think they think that they're saving lives or whatever they're doing, and they're like godlike. And guys, we're just drawing on people's skin for a living. That's all we're doing. We're drawing. We're just artists. So my advice is, you know, don't give yourself too much of a hard time if you can't get that shade to work, because it'll come. It's just a progression. Nobody's going to get up there overnight. You've got to put the work in. You've got to put the dedication in, and then eventually your work will start come together and you'll look back on your previous work and think, wow, like that, you know, look at the progress that I've made, and then you'll keep building on that and building on it, and then who knows where it's going to take you, guys. So just have fun with it. Don't overthink it. Don't listen to the haters. And nobody was born a tattooist. I don't know how many times I've heard tattooists say, oh, I was born with a pencil in my hand and I've never put it down since. And it's like, pfft. I tend to find that the best artists out there are the most humble ones, and they don't need to go and, you know, scream and shout about how good their work is. The work speaks for itself. So just have fun with it, guys. Don't listen to the haters. So one really quick last thing, guys, if you have enjoyed this video, it means a lot to me. Just hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to hit the notification bell, because then you stay up to date with all my latest uploads. Please feel free to drop your comments in the box below. I always try to respond to as many comments as I possibly can. And with that said, guys, thanks for watching. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.